Yeah, this game's still sick. Yeah! This channel has already gone over the 1,000-Year Door at length, so if you haven't seen that, please watch this video sometime, preferably when you're eating, and tell me what you're eating. But that video goes over TTYD as a love letter to storytelling, what it does to celebrate individual methods and genres of storytelling, but only really going after the final chapter's plot and Flavio. Yo! Something that keeps Mario's second paperized adventure so special is that a lot of those individual stories are incredibly good. Most notably, the game's third chapter continues to be celebrated. A cool tournament arc with a professional wrestling chicken man headlining a mystery with plot twists, perils, and the first playable Yoshi in any Mario RPG, and the only one outside of the first Rabbids game, I think. It's a super flashy, hyper-memorable tale. But within the glitz and glory lies the murky underside of the wrestling business. Chapter 3 isn't just a fun little romp filled with flavor, it's a full-blown melodrama that shows the dark side of the ring, the desperation of staying on top, both the price of fame and why it remains a tantalizing forbidden fruit for those who have tasted it. And in the center of it all is one villain embodying the entire process, a character whose entire life is this business, this darkness, this pursuit of fame, and how they're perfectly interwoven to both contrast Mario's story and blend in with it. And so, I ask you, what do you want to talk about? How about this little tale? The following video is scheduled for one fall and is for the underrated Mario Baddie Championship. Introducing from the slums of Rogueport, weighing in at roughly 2 hours of combined screen time, he is the Merciless Executioner, the Gilded Grandstander, the Self-Made Monster, eternally Macho! This is Ric Flair. Woo! Categorically speaking, he's definitely in contention to be called one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. Having laced his boots for his first pro wrestling match in December of 1972, Flair has had a career spanning over 5 decades in the ring. And his style and charisma certainly live up to his name.
I'm still wearing cashmere. Yeah. I'm still walking around in alligators. Woo! Arrogant? Oh, you know I am. I'm the kind of man that everybody out there loves to hate.
Flair was the stylin', profilin', limousine-riding, jet-flying, kiss-stealin', wheelin' and dealin' son of a gun that everyone either wanted to be or see get beaten. A heel so built on privilege and status that flaunted it so ostentatiously that there can't help but be a level of respect mixed in with the contempt.
Learn to love it! Learn to live with it! Diamonds are forever!
This was then compounded with his reputation as the dirtiest player in the game, using his wealth of technical know-how to always steal victory from the jaws of defeat, to seemingly get his comeuppance, only to weasel his way out of it and laugh at those who failed to stop him. Flair was as flashy and infuriating as he was captivating and entertaining, always willing to bleed for his craft. Even if promoters would tell him, "Rick, please don't bleed for your craft, you've lost a lot of blood and will lose a lot of money from sponsors." Because nobody bleeds like him. He's got multiple cities devoting different days to him, world championships over 3 major North American promotions, and has been called the greatest wrestler of all time by Hulk Hogan, who has an ego the size of... and still said, "Nah, Flair's better, brother." Ric Flair is professional wrestling. The success, adulation, drama, physical exertion, technical mastery, and true joy of the ring. And he loves it, truly and dearly. 50 years on from his debut, the man can still shout out, "I'll never retire."
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man. And I'm saying, I'm the man. Ric Flair, woo!
In his globe-trotting quest to achieve the Crystal Stars, Mario arrives at the glamorous town of Glitzville, a massive floating arena in the sky where the fabulously wealthy can watch New Age gladiators duke it out for fame and glory. Taking design cues from both the Roman Colosseum mixed in with a Chinese temple, or more closely, Grauman's Chinese theater, Glitzville is made to be a rather cheap, very Hollywood homage to all forms of tournament fighting. And as Mario discovers when he enters the heart of the Glitz Pit, the greatest form of combat to represent the entirety of the world is wrestling.
Big meaty man slapping meat. That's why I'm here.
The player immediately sees the champ who runs the camp, Rock Hawk, who is the exact kind of grandiose, verbose musclehead you'd expect from a guy named after The Rock or Hulk Hogan, depending on your territory. And on seeing this apex avian hold aloft a title belt showing off a crystal star, the thing Mario needs to save Princess Peach and probably like the world at this point, it's quickly decided that the best course of action is to become a professional wrestler and claw your way to the top of the ladder until you get your prize. Obviously.
Oh, yes.
And it's here where Mario comes face to face with the star of our show, the money-grubbing clubber, Grubba. True art right there. Pythagoras couldn't draw something more poetic. There are 3 things immediately apparent about Grubba upon meeting him. The guy is as sleazy and untrustworthy as they come. He is aggressively American, with either his southern drawl in English-speaking territories or his various English exclamations in others. And he truly, deeply loves the art of fighting. There is a sincere enthusiasm to Grubba when you walk through his door. He may be wheelin' and dealin' trying to sign you up to an indefinite contract, but he's a former street brawler himself, worked his way up from the bottom until he was so successful, he made the glamorous Glitzville you're standing in what it is. He is an earnest believer in combat sports as both entertainment and a means of achieving success. And if you're willing to play ball and give a good performance like that golden child Rock Hawk, he'll gladly heap extra monetary rewards, praise, and promotion on top of you. But of course, you gotta earn it. After signing on and getting a flashy new name from the chairman, the Great Gonzalez, Grubba tosses you into a way dingier and dirtier locker room with some absolute losers and leaves you with a handler far less enthusiastic than he is about this rigmarole, Jolene. Now, Jolene lacks any of Grubba's charisma, stating blunt facts right in your face, dismissing any attempts to talk to her as, "No, I'm not interested in dating you," looking for efficiency whenever possible when you goof around, and thinking very little of you, telling you to not totally get killed in the ring. She reflects everyone's opinion of you when you join as a new fighter. While this nice YouTuber and his Bob-omb buddy are pretty kind to the newbie Gonzalez, everyone else around Glitzville knows the score. Big names like Rock Hawk and former champion Prince Mush can be spread around, counted on, bet on even. But nobodies like you aren't worth anything until you prove it in the ring. The player gets a fantastic dichotomy of Grubba selling this amazing fantasy of fighting directly to the player, even continuing to sell it to him through every conversation and gassing up opponents in the ring. and Jolene's clinical cynicism representing the pure business side of things. You hear about other fighters being injured, inspire King K not to greatness, but to retirement, as he isn't going anywhere with his career and can't keep up with a rising star like you. Even get to see how disposable you really are. King K packing up for good and being replaced on the day of his retirement by this nervous little swooper. Of Glitz and Glory uses its time to effectively paint a picture of just how uncaring the business can be for those who the sun doesn't shine on. But you get under those lights and the crowd starts cheering, and brother, Grubba is right! Being a rich and famous fighter is diggity dang dynamite!
Let's go!
The Glitz Pit takes the hallway scouring environment of Paper Gonzalez and streamlines it into a gauntlet of 20 fights, some of them well beneath Gonzalez's level, and some featuring enemies that won't appear again until much later in the adventure. This is about on par with the number of fights in any other chapter, if not a bit lower, but gets differentiated by Grubba adding fight conditions like not using your hammer, needing to take damage multiple times, or winning within 5 turns so that he can make a dinner date. And while you could just go through this roster of fights as a menial checklist of repetitive challenges with gimmicks for variation like some people might, bro, this is Chomp Country's on. We gonna fight a chain chomp? And whoever Crawdaddy is, and he's a goth version of the dude who kicked your butt / whose butt you kicked in the prologue? I wanna do that! Glitzville creates this palpable sense of excitement as you climb the ranks. Going from a nobody who not a single person has the time of day for, into a respected fighter who pops a crowd just by being there.
Hello!
After every single fight, the dialogue of your locker room brothers updates. And after every few fights, everyone in Glitzville updates their opinion of you. You get to learn more about the inaugural Glitz Pit champion, Prince Mush, and how your high-flying acrobatics remind fans of what this sport's been missing since he left the ring. You could see Rockhawk being swarmed by fans occasionally as you start your journey, and can hammer them away, much to his annoyance. But as you climb the ranks, they become Gonzalez diehards who are glad to shower you in the same idolatry. And you can still hammer them away because it's funny. Some jabroni from the other channel shows up and calls Gonzalez by his dead name, and you stomp him anyway, and Grubba rolls with it because that's showbiz, baby! You fall to an invincible enemy, and then the power of love and kindness and kayfabe causes this egg you found to hatch into a Yoshi child who can wreck that gimmicky tag team in 2 moves. And you get to name your own newborn tag partner with all of the spirit of the pit.
Yoshi is not your friend. He'll answer to violence. Violence.
Chapter 3 is doing all that it can within the limitations of Paper Gonzalez's systems in order to give the feel of pro wrestling, reflect the joy of watching a new star climb up the ranks and leave an impact, and show that impact he has on others. Gonzalez even has more dialogue options here than in most other chapters, for no real reason and no real consequence other than to lean into the attitude and sportsmanship of the entire affair. Man, wrestling can be good, okay? And this makes me feel great like that. It's just like, damn! But the Glitz Pit isn't satisfied being a showcase of how much fun sports entertainment can be. After you've ascended into the major leagues, Rockhawk shows up to scope out the competition, and you learn that, oops, the crystal star on his belt is more fake than a Damien Sandow push. But in the same breath, Gonzalez receives an anonymous email instructing him on how to find the real crystal star related to the deep mysteries of the Glitz Pit, and the seedy underbelly of this business slowly gets revealed. Glitzville has always been a not-so-secretly unsavory place, fueled by sports betting. You even had to go through the mafia to even get here. Okay, if you're afraid of heights, how are you here? Were you born here? This gossip, Bandy Andy, has been spreading the mysteries of the pit since early on, ranging from the innocuous rumor of the man-eating toilet to legitimately not knowing where other fighters go after sometimes sudden retirements. Some of these even involve Jolene and Grubba, wondering on how the 60-something-year-old Grubba can somehow look so fit and lively, or where Jolene will disappear to for hours at a time when she's not enforcing the rules to a T. Speaking of her, she sure does seem to show up every time you're investigating something sketchy and tries tightening security just before you sneak into the storeroom. And when you do sneak into that room and eavesdrop on Grubba's office, you get to hear the old Grubster trying to ask Jolene where she's been disappearing to. And then he's like, I say, y'all know anything about that there crystal star? And then this more articulate anonymous guy starts threatening you, and then a fan sends you cake?
Yummy.
But you're so paranoid about it that it could be a trap, so you say no to it, but it's just a totally normal cake. So when another cake comes, you eat the cake, and then, oh no, Yoshi's been poisoned! And you die to chain chomps because you're stupid and don't buy items and have to fight the Hammer Brother team again, which is hard in this incredible universal experience that wasn't just me, everyone went through it. Shut up!
Oh, man.
There's a lot that happens here. You get a legitimately solid series of mysteries involving the two major controversial figures that are already wrapped up in mysteries. The Glitz Pit has a rich lore beyond its ring. The intrigue behind it showing up as this cute little horrifying plot between Gonzalez, Rockhawk, Jolene, and Grubba. You're motivated to get to the top not just through fights and glamour, but figuring out who can be behind this. Your investment in the dialogue and world of the Glitz Pit paying dividends with this unexpectedly dark plot. And every piece of this puzzle eventually finds its way back into the hands of the architect who built this violent farce. And it's disturbing, and it's great. And more than the fights themselves, it's real. This is Ric Flair in 2022. He is 73 years old, on blood thinners, a pacemaker in his heart keeping him going to stave off the damage from his alcoholic cardiomyopathy. He has just put on a massive independent pay-per-view show, the second largest indie gate in history, entitled Ric Flair's Last Match. And overall, it's been a pretty fun and good show. Until we get to the main event. Hobbling around, Rick is struggling to perform slowed-down versions of his greatest hits. Flair, as could be expected of him, cuts himself wide open for the fans, blood pouring down his face into a crimson mask. Twice he blacks out during this match. One of them is confirmed by a physician afterward to have been a heart attack suffered in the middle of the ring. It is a harrowing, uncomfortable display for all involved, as Flair is helped out of the ring, unable to walk on his own power, and a reminder of all the sport gives and takes. Ric Flair loves wrestling. His identity is wrestling. He cannot stop wrestling. And in the face of the hardest limitations his aging and battle-worn body can offer, defiantly cries out against it. It's truly pitiable in a way that my heart aches for. Combat sports are a dumb, beautiful spectacle where the time you spend at the top is terrifyingly and cruelly limited, and the pursuit of trying to capture that adulation, adrenaline, the love of the crowd, the artistry and physical mastery put into hitting someone really cool like, is a siren so tempting that you'd give everything to her. Even when the crowd has left and you've no one to grapple with but yourself. Digging deeper into Glitz Pit lore, you find that its mysteries are as blatant as they are oddly cruel. That poison cake, yeah, That's just from an insecure rock hawk who pulled this trick before on the Glitz Pit's original champion, Prince Mush, and is glad to cheat to keep his status and stop Gonzalez too. He's not much of a manipulative mastermind, just a skittish little man who knows how to keep and bask in the glory and power he feels he's earned as long as possible. A statement on the industry, sure, but it's not hard to rule him out and limit the Crystal Star chase down to Grubba and Jolene. But where that chase leads grows more and more disturbed. In following the mysteries of the pit, you delve into its deepest storeroom, and crushed underneath a massive block requiring the latest in hammer technology to shatter are the barely responding bodies of the fighters you thought once retired. King K simply vanished as he was promising retirement, but it's entirely possible in climbing through the ranks, you didn't even notice Bandy Andy was nowhere to be found after a while, replaced without a word or thought by this Spinia team that no one ever fought until the remake. And they're rotting. Andy only capable of warning you never to approach an empty ring, and the king entirely catatonic. The original version even showing flies hovering around his decaying body. This is really striking and concerning and morbid for the Gonzalez series. And the only thing to do from here is finish the rise to the top and know that when you were coming across this darkest secret, Jolene was watching. Actually beating Rockhawk is almost an anticlimax. His theme's amazing, a little less so in the remake if you ask me. But this plot has become about something more than sports entertainment at this point, and his zero defense, single target candy ass ain't gonna be putting up a big challenge. The great Gonzalez ascends to the top of the mountain with only a few questions to follow. And here is where Grubba comes back to the forefront. Your shady promoter's always been awful at looking innocent, but with a simple trip to spy on him through this vent, you basically overhear him monologuing to no one that yeah, he killed those dudes in the attic and is probably going to try to kill you soon too for being onto him. The mysteries of the Glitz Pit end with probably as hilariously blatant of a villain reveal as you can get. But Grubba's never really been a schemer. He's a promoter. He's a hype man. He's a fighter of yesteryear who never gets the chance to shine. And more than anything, he is an opportunist.
You take life, the ups and downs. If you're a real man, you never go down, you just stay up.
You see, Grubba is glad to regale you with tales of his past as a fantastic fighter, but according to this weird sewer guru who can remember when the Glitz Pit wasn't the be-all end-all for sports entertainment, the pit proprietor used to be pretty mediocre. However, his fortunes changed when he found a glittering gem, and holding it as a good luck charm, rapidly rose through the ranks in a matter of years. However, given that Prince Mush was the pit's first champion, and that the Grubster is in his 60s, it's very likely that Grubba went through most of his life as a jobber, unable to achieve success where it counted, and close to over the hill when he finally got to that success. His time in the sun was almost unfairly short, and with a life of struggle presumably behind him, Grubba wasn't about to let go of that brass ring just yet. The lucky charm he happened to find was the Gold Star, an ancient relic forged by a world-ending demon to contain the power of the heavens themselves and solidify her might. And somehow tapping into its power, Grubba was the prize fighter he'd always hoped to be. Grubba studied the star's power in secret, until eventually creating a machine that would let him drain the life force and power out of another soul and add it to his own strength. He'd sucked down Prince Mush, King K, Bandy Andy, and others before him, and now he lures you into the middle of the ring for one final showdown. the fastest rising star Grubba had ever promoted, the Great Gonzalez, against all of the borrowed time and glory he'd stolen to feel like he was in the spotlight for just a little longer. Dreams do come true, even if they aren't yours exactly, and it's time to ring that bell. In his macho form, Grubba is everything he dreamed of being. He's got 60 HP, by far the most health of any opponent Gonzalez has faced up to this point, and one of the tankiest dudes in the world in general. The only creatures that exceed Grubba's HP threshold in the base game are 2 dragons of legend, a robot powered by a different crystal star, and the demon that made the crystal stars themselves. And Bowser. Moreover, Grubba is the only boss in the game who actively uses the power of his crystal star, utilizing the power lift move to buff his attack, defense, speed, and evasion all through the fight. And while his base attack of 4 isn't super impressive, the fact that he's almost always scaling it up with a buff and can easily hit Gonzalez and his partner simultaneously means that Grubba puts a lot more pressure on you than most enemies could, especially for this early in the game. If the crystal stars are sentient, they have actively granted Grubba's wish here. As a physical specimen, he is, at this point in time, the single most powerful creature known to the world.
We all get old, but also few of us get great.
And yet, borrowed power can never overcome the hard work of a bona fide superstar.
Let's go!
While Grubba does gain massive power from the star, his reliance on it is his ultimate weakness. Even though Grubba can double up his turns to really put the hurt on Gonzalez, he will always use one of his 2 turns to buff himself up, unable to rely on his own strength for even a moment. Whenever his speed buff wears off, the insecure promoter will always use his turn to reapply it, even when he could just win the match with 1 more attack, leaving himself wide open to retaliation or giving Gonzalez a rest if he's thoroughly gassed. Grubba has become so reliant on the gold star for anything, he is incapable of fighting without it, lacking the confidence to even throw a punch without its backing. It doesn't matter how many rump-kicking moves he made illegal back in the day, Grubba is decidedly a one-trick pony, so dedicated to the one thing that gives him strength that he folds instantly to anything besides a straight-up brawl. Status effects especially, Grubba's incredibly susceptible to them compared to other bosses, including a debilitating 75% chance to get shrunken by Yoshi's mini eggs on each hit, and a 40% base chance to get frozen in time by the Emerald Star. It's not long before Gonzalez has the power-draining promoter on the ropes, and all Grubba can say against it is compliments to his rising star. Throughout the fight, Grubba will praise Gonzalez for keeping up, promising him that it ain't over till it's over, and at the end of the road, tells him that it was a great fight. Sure, you might still look a little schlubby, but there was always potential there. Even if you're not to his tastes, Grubba can find room for you. And that right there is the big thing about Grubba. Never once could he give up the joy of feeling like the strongest man alive. Jolene shows up and reveals that she was the one guiding your hand, trying to figure out what happened after her brother, Prince Mush, had disappeared, and feeling hopeless having secretly watched Grubba transform. Until you appeared and gave her hope. And while this means that, yeah, the Great Gonzalez is truly an excellent fighter, it also very neatly frames all of Grubba's desperate actions. Grubba doesn't transform out of some necessity to keep himself alive. He transformed in between Mush vanishing and Mario showing up He talks to himself paranoidly about whoever gets in his way. He looks at his secret papers just cause they're there. Grubba sucks at keeping his secret people-eating operation under wraps. He's not a schemer. He's a fella who got hoodwinked by a taste of power and the thrill of the ring. And, like many entertainers before him, could not let it go. And that reliance on power, that inescapable desire, trapped him in an endless cycle until someone came up and slugged him in the face. How fitting for Grubba to construct the very machine that he would fall in. A gilded cage surrounded by an empty arena for no one to cheer his name. Grubba completely disappears from TTYD after his defeat. Prince Mush is restored to life through a pretty narratively underdeveloped function of the Crystal Stars, honestly, as is everyone that we saw Grubba drain. The Great Gonzalez retires unless you want an honestly unfulfilling second run at the belt. Jolene takes over operations of the Glitz Pit. Rockhawk swears to not poison people anymore and will instead just be a dick. And Mario continues his quest. Yahoo! You'd be forgiven saying this is a whole lot of hoopla for a chapter boss in a Mario RPG. But I think it's because he's a small chapter boss in a Mario RPG that makes Grubba so special. In both of the first Paper Mario games, Chapter 3 can pretty adequately be described as a giant soul-devouring Grubba has a big secret that you need to uncover, but go about it in entirely different ways. Paper Mario's Tubba Blubba is a delightful fella, but a very standard Mario encounter, hiding his fairy tale weakness away so you can't bop him, and then you do and save a bunch of ghosts who were bullying him in, I think, is a moral lesson about not taking pranks too far? It's cute. It fits Mario's tone. It makes me happy. Ladybow. Grubba takes that simple concept and goes, what if he wanted so desperately to share that secret, but couldn't openly? It ties the entirety of the passion of combat sports into it, gives Grubba the background to desperately need to rely on that secret, paints him with all of the cultural mannerisms and idiosyncrasies of an untrustworthy son of a gun to sell his sly ways, and makes you feel the joy of all of the glitz and glory that he wanted to bask in. He's not just a subversion of a Mario trope, he's the centerpiece to his own miniature parable, using a modern corollary to the fairy tale stylings of indulgence, pride, and the pursuit of strength to make for an unforgettable experience. And ultimately, his self-serving ways to have his eternal championship serve to contrast TTYD's simple message. It's the stories we forge with others, the bonds we make, what we hold on to share and cooperate instead of take and devour that has meaning. And I don't know. I think it's really cool when a series like Mario, which is so inherently unassuming in its narrative delivery, goes that extra mile in creating something so unique, rich, and memorable. It's why this sly little man takes up way too much of my brain space. It's what makes Grubba, Glitzville, and the pursuit of Glitz and Glory the most underrated villain story Mario has ever told.